Men, welcome to The Next Stage, a podcast built just for you. We've asked the question before, what would you do if you had a resource that was dedicated 100% to your personal growth and development? That there was no real hook in it. There was no something that was out there that somebody wanted you to really invest in or some program, but just was there just for you, that had a heart that said, let's grow together and let's develop you. And I'm so excited to be the host of The Next Stage. My name is Rob Stout, and it has been a dream to be able to do this, to be able to find a platform to communicate. And I'm super excited about what we're doing today. We are really wrapping up a series that we've been in called The School of Hard Knocks. And the format for that has really been out of a book that I wrote called Getting Even, Countering Life's Hard Knocks. And the idea being, how do you walk through this stuff? We get trained in a lot of different things in life. I mean, how to ride a bike, how to throw a baseball, how to study, how to read, how to do business, how to change a tire, how to do whatever it is that we're doing. But how often do we get training and mentoring, really, and coaching and walking through the hardest things of life? We've been in a series called The School of Hard Knocks, and it's been 101, 201, 301, 401. And I'm just going to recap them for you. If I would encourage you to go back and start, I think it was episode 7, 8, 9, and 10. I think it's what it was. But 101, we basically said, you know what? Something needs to happen to you so that something can happen in you, so that something can happen through you. And hard knocks are, in essence, the seasonedness of a battle-tested man. The next episode was all about kind of the hardest things in life. It was really emotional. We took a look at, man, what do you do when the hardest things of life, those hardest Category 5 storms of life hit you? And in essence, we said, hey, listen, reach out to another man. Prepare your life so that when you need it, you've got a man right there. And if you're that other man, reach in to another man's stuff, reach into where he's at, and then reach up to somebody, to God, who cares more about you than you could ever possibly imagine. The next episode, we hit a very practical part of this, and it was get sick and tired of where you are at, make a plan, and get going. And then the last episode, we took a look at the issue of entitlement, where entitlement is really a disease of myopia. It's a very small way of living when all you have is you. Your life becomes very, very small. And the remedy of that is giving. It's living larger. It's breaking out of that and forcing yourself to live larger through giving. For me, that's it. You can tell where a person's life is going by what they invest in financially, giving, and serving. And today I'm super excited. My friend, longtime friend, Joe Bahr is with us, and I'm super excited. Joe and I have been friends for how long?
6 years.
6 years?
Yeah.
Something like that. We've done some men's retreats together. You've heard me talk about the With Everything men's weekend. Joe has staffed that. We've been through a number of different things together. And this is a guy that I love. And just super excited that we've got him here to just talk and tell stories about the School of Hard Knocks and some of the things he's learned and some of the things he would pass on. So super excited, Joe. Welcome.
Thank you, brother.
Welcome to the
Glad
Next
to be
Stage.
here.
Thank you.
I'm really sad that you have a hard time getting excited, though.
I know. I'm pretty dialed
I
in.
wish you could just bring it in.
I'm a little bit of a wallflower, so
yeah,
a bit of an introvert.
I love your enthusiasm.
I don't care what it is we're going to do. We're going to have fun.
That's right. That's right.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. What did you do career-wise? Recently retired?
Correct. Yeah.
Tell us.
Feels good.
Give us that 30,000-foot view. What did you do career-wise and a little bit of that background?
I would say that from 1977 to current, I've been investing in men. That happened through Young Life. It happened through a used car business that I was a part of out in Northeast Colorado. Happened through ministries like FCA, our prison ministry that we've just started. But I was in full-time ministry for 25 plus years. The last 8 years, I've been working for a electrical contractor and supporting those guys. So I would say really my career's been investing in men.
Yeah, that's awesome. And a little bit about the prison ministry. So just so cool what you guys are able to do.
So about 20 years ago, my wife and I got exposed to prison ministry. And
you're doing time or what?
We had dinner with a lady whose son had just gone to Young Life camp and given his life to Christ. And she's like, hey, can you come out at Christmas, Darlene? Darlene had just released an album, and I guess what an album is, a CD. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think they still call them albums, so
let's go with that.
It's recording. Of some sort.
A recording.
8-track.
Joanne really loved Darlene's music. Said, can you come sing to my boys? She's like, well, I know you got this son here, and you have another, but you want a private concert? She's like, no, I'm the warden at the work camp, at the federal work camp outside of El Paso. La Tuna, and Darlene gulped, her eyes got real big, and she said, you want me to come to prison?
Wow.
And Joanne was so smart. She's like, nobody comes at Christmas, Darlene. And I will have cinnamon rolls and Hallmark cards, and everyone, I think there was about 300 guys in this work camp.
Right.
And we went, Darlene got like 6 standing ovations. She's like, whatever this is, I got to keep doing it.
Wow.
And I had connected with one guy that I'm still connected with. And we went through Costa discipleship. And just kind of, I'm more of a one-on-one or small group type guy. Darlene is more of a bigger the better. So that's how we got into it.
So investing in men from high school to guys who were very, blue collar in their in their approach to guy as far as the electricians go, to men in prison.
Capital murders.
Yep. Right.
Yeah, you don't land on Texas death row for cheating on your
nice
SAT.
Guy for cheating on your SAT, for jaywalking, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Cool. So, kind of turning the corner here to the topic of hard knocks. We made the statement in our first, in 101 of this, that hard knocks are the mark of a battle-tested man.
Right.
And something really needs to happen to you so that something can happen in you, so that something different and new and better and growth-centered would happen through you.
Right.
Give me your thoughts on that and kind of how you've kind of learned through that in your own life.
Scripture says, in this world, you will have trouble.
Yeah.
So it's appropriate for us to expect there to be trouble, Rob. So for me, that trouble started kind of at a young age. And a lot of my messaging to myself was, I'll never be like my dad. That really stinks, to be a son of a dad that you love, that you don't want to be anything like.
So this wasn't a positive thing, like I'll never measure up to him. Like, no. I do not want to be like
I don't want to follow in those tracks.
Yep.
And fast forward, married now, have a kid, and I catch myself saying some of the same things that my dad had said to me. And I was like, this needs to change.
Right.
This has to go differently.
Right.
So in that time, I was talking to my daughter today, and she said, Dad, thank you for getting outside of yourself and getting some help in a time, this was in the 80s, where men did not do that.
It was not real in vogue. Right?
No. You're a broken man if you need a counselor.
Right.
And
like you're in AA or you're
I'm a
on
broken
drugs
man.
or whatever.
Right.
But early on, you're like, I gotta grow.
It wasn't enough to say, I don't want to be like that. I needed a new pattern. So those are kind of cumulative hard knocks that I had decided I was going to take the step to do differently. Which means you're going to have to leave some things behind, right? Maxwell use this analogy. John Maxwell is a leadership kind of guru, and he says, when we come against hard knocks or difficulties in our life, we're getting pulled through a knothole. And we're getting pulled to something better and greater, but something has to be left behind. And to me, in those hard knocks along life's way, having the right perspective to say, I believe there is something better. And even though I don't know what it is, and I truthfully don't fully know how to get there, I'm going to head in that direction. And I'm willing to leave some stuff behind.
Right. So, Joe, in that light, why would you say something happens that has to happen to you? Like, why does trouble have to come? And even talking to men who aren't of faith necessarily,
right?
Why does something difficult have to come and hit your life in order to make you into something different? Why would you say that is? See that in dynamic?
Of course, yeah. I think as men, as humans, we have the mantra, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So we will not fix something we don't perceive to be broken, right? And then there's the other end of it too, where men are trying to fix things that are perfectly fine. They just like to tinker. So I think for me, what that caused was an impetus to do different.
Yeah. And it also, like if you think about like sports or like life as a sport, there's something in us or something. You were a wrestler, right? High school. There's something that is like we want to be pushed to that other thing.
Right.
But we need to be taught that something needs to happen. The discipline needs to happen to us so that something can happen in us. And that something in us is mental discipline, emotional discipline, physical discipline. And it's interesting that an entire generation is growing up where parents are trying to keep all of that stuff from happening to their kids.
Right.
Yeah.
They're trying to protect them from the difficulties, but they're robbing them.
And because nothing's going to happen in them, nothing's going to happen through them.
Nope.
Right. And so it's easy for old guys to sit and go, oh, yeah, it's this generation. But guess what? We did it.
Yep.
We didn't have a choice.
Right.
We didn't have all this affluence around to protect and to do all this. It was like, just go get it. Go make it happen.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. That is an interesting take on that. What role have you seen hard knocks play in your life to make you become the man that you are today?
I kind of see it like an alarm clock. And there have been many times in my life that I've let that alarm clock ring a long time before I gave it the attention that it needed. So to me, it's a wake-up call. If I'll pay attention to it. If I ignore it, it will just keep ringing. But then I also realize those alarms that were ringing, a bigger bell comes next. The stakes become higher.
Do you have an example that is okay to air publicly?
Sure. I was thinking, for me, that happened at a weekend. But what kind of pushed me to go on that weekend was being made aware of some disconnects in my life, where I could have the right answer, but there was really not much emotion or empathy. And if you know anything about me, as you've experienced me, Rob, I'm like capital E empathy.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's why when I'm going through something, man, I want to come and just be with you because you're like, you can hold that. You're with me.
Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't always like that. I wanted to give you the right answer because I wanted to look good and I wanted to be right. So what happened is that created the disconnect. And interestingly enough, and I wonder if this isn't true with most guys, that we disconnect from our greatest asset. And so for me, understanding from my wife and my daughter that you got some things you need to look at, Dad, honey. You got nice answers, but they lack compassion and they lack empathy. Why do you feel like you have to do that?
When did that happen? How long ago was that?
About 7 years ago.
Okay.
Not that long.
Right.
So it needed to happen.
So you were right answer guy.
Yeah.
But a little distant. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And what was formed in you was empathy and opening up, just being vulnerable with other men.
Right. I think the empathy was always there. And I could have that for other people, but not my own family. Isn't that interesting how that plays out? And I think it's true for a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Is that we can be more of ourselves to people that don't know us. To me, the stakes were higher. I wanted to have the right answer, the spiritual answer to my family and lead them well. Yeah, I had no idea what it looked like to lead a family spiritually.
Sure.
And I'm still growing into that.
Right.
I mean, to me, that's the great adventure.
Right. But you're right in that. In this, we get applauded at work, we get awarded, we get accolades. We go home. Nobody sees this.
Right.
Right. Nobody. It's like, but it is true. The stuff you do. I've been learning a lot about Kobe Bryant. Like after he died, right, of his work in the gym that nobody saw, the training regimen and all that. Nobody saw that.
Yeah.
But it helped him become the player he was.
Right.
And it's like, you know what? Yeah, the stuff we do that nobody's watching.
Right.
Nobody cares. Nobody's going to award Joe for sitting and talking with his wife or his daughter, right? But that's the stuff that forms the good stuff in you.
Yeah, it does.
It's really good. It's good.
If you pay attention to it.
Right.
A boss of mine said, if you don't pay attention, it causes pain and tension. And that has kind of stuck. Of Joe, you need to pay attention. There are bells ringing. There are lights flashing. Pay attention.
I hear it. I hear it. It's good stuff. Good stuff. So episode number 8, we jumped into really the hardest storms of our life, reaching out to another man and really prepping a life that says when that stuff happens, that they're right there. You don't have to sink and drown and hope somebody gets you, but you're prepping your life, but reaching out to another man, reaching in down, but not down like the person's lower than you, but reaching down in the hole with them, helping pull them up, and then reaching up to God, who cares about you more than you could ever know. And this show really geared to men who aren't necessarily church guys. They're the guys that you and I work with every day.
Yeah.
And we just try to live out practically what this looks like. And it leads to a lot of good conversations. But that whole idea of reaching out to another man and not being isolated when stuff hits our life. What would you tell men about doing that versus the tendency to kind of cower in the corner and just be the hurt, wounded animal?
Yeah.
What would you tell a man about that?
It seems, Rob, that kind of what's in spiritual things, be natural, right? In natural things, be spiritual. Okay. Meaning our tendency is to go back in our cave and get to safety when hard things happen. So in that, I have to ask myself, do I really want to do this alone? Right? Like, go to the end of that road, turn the light on there, and see if it's better with a friend or without a friend.
Right.
And it's better with a friend. Now, I will tell you, the older I get, the harder it is. You would think it'd be easier. But people's lives, even if they're retired or they don't have grandkids, people's lives continue to get faster. And as much social media and communication that we have, it's still really rare to have a friend pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, I've been thinking about you. How you doing?
Yeah. You've
been on my mind. You've been on my heart. So I would say pay attention to that bell. If someone comes to mind, at least text them, for pity's sakes. Say, hey, how you doing? How's your wife doing? I just found out about a friend whose wife needs a liver. And I guarantee you no one is reaching out to him and asking him about this really hard struggle. And I was like, man, I'm thinking of this guy. I'm gonna text him.
Yep.
How you doing? How's your wife? He's like, man, thank you so much. Doesn't require an hour-long conversation. So act on what you're being prompted to do.
Right.
As far as reaching out and communicating.
Yeah. And that's really an example of the reaching in.
Right.
We talked about the Brene Brown idea of, empathy being jumping, not throwing a book down in the hole to somebody else or throwing a Hallmark card.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with Hallmark cards.
Right.
But jumping in the hole with them.
Right.
Right. Have you always been a man who cultivated relationships around you so that you had people to reach out to? Or is this kind of a newer development in your growth as well?
I had to learn that.
Okay.
I realized that I didn't have the pattern that I wanted and needed. So I went to a fellow car dealer. I knew he was a believer. And I said, hey, Hayes, would you mentor me? And he flat out told me no.
Right.
And so he's like, well, this just happened to my family, and I don't think I'm the right person to do that. And I just said, hey, can I just come to the dealership and grab a cup of coffee and come sit in your office every other week? Oh, yeah, we could do that.
Right.
And so I kind of forced my way, knowing that I needed, believing that that was the man that God was leading me towards.
Right.
So I don't think I've always cultivated that. I think I always needed it, but more and more I'm being reminded that you get in what, you get out what you put in.
Well, absolutely. And there was a young man who I had a conversation with this week. He was like, hey, I'm trying to get into this, this program, and I'm in this internship, and how do you do it? Do I just ask somebody to mentor me? And I go, no, you don't, because that sounds like an enormous commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody eats lunch. He goes, not this guy. I said, all right, then that guy drinks bourbon.
Yeah.
or whatever. Or he
Right,
does
right.
coffee, or he gets breakfast, and you just say, hey, can I grab a cup of coffee with you?
Right.
You're on a break. Can I? Or you just force the conversation.
Right.
And you end it with, man, can we grab lunch sometime? I'd love to continue this conversation.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily ask for this big deal, but for younger men, and I've had that question a lot from younger guys, like, how do I do this? Well, you're not asking for
for the moon.
The moon.
Right.
You ask for a little sliver of a half an hour.
Yeah.
Or you just start a conversation. Do you have a minute?
Right.
All of a sudden you become very interesting to them as well. And that's more on the mentoring side of things. So the last phase of that 201 part of what we were talking about is really the reaching up. And we talked about reaching up to, you may not be religious guy. You may not be church guy. You may not be guy who really has ever thought at all about God. But I can guarantee you, when the fecal matter of life hits the fan, your reaction is to either blame God or seek God, one of the two, right? You don't even have to be a churched person to do that. The old line, there are no atheists in the foxhole, right? When you're under desperate circumstances, the idea of, we talked about it, is reaching up and just going, God, if you're there, type of a deal. Really, the question, Joe, I have for you is, what would you tell a man about, like, he's not necessarily religious. He's not a church guy. He's just a normal guy. He's not a bad guy, just a normal guy.
Right.
Right? But what would you tell him about reaching up when he needs something in his life? Like when it really hits the fan in life. What would you tell him?
I would say, be honest with yourself. Be honest with whatever you think is out there, to the point where you just start at the beginning. Start with what you have. If that's a 1% faith, start there. God, if you're really there, I could really use some help. That's an honest prayer. I think any man, woman, or child could pray that prayer honestly.
Right.
I know for me, where I encounter the up the best is in solitude. So pay attention to what's blasting here. Is it CNN, Fox News, podcasts?
Right. Twitter.
There are so many things that are vying for people's attention. I think guys especially. Just shut it off for a bit.
Right.
Maybe that's first thing in the morning. Maybe it's last thing at night. And utter the best cry for help you know how to utter.
Right. The old, God, if you're there, you know,
right.
Just call of the heart, like to just go, if you're there. And I told him, man, this was a couple weeks ago. I was like, listen, if you were created the way I believe you were, if there is an intelligent designer, if somebody knew you before you were born, which I believe all that to be true, that
absolutely
makes sense in my life. If that's true, don't you think that God would know how to connect with you? And I told the guy, young guy, 15 years old, I said, my prayer is that you would reach out to him and find him, because he's reaching out to you.
Yeah.
Didn't need to go into some sermon or anything.
Right,
That was
right.
plenty. But I was like, doesn't it make sense that he would figure out how to connect with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for a lot of guys, that happens outdoors.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the heavens declare his goodness and greatness.
My friend David, I love to watch the world wake up.
Yeah.
And he means in a tree stand. And I'm not a big hunter guy, right?
That's not much of a world, but I get it.
For him, it's
Yeah.
duck blind.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool. Right on. Well, listen, let's shift gears a little bit. So episode 9 went from kind of the hard emotional side to getting very practical, making a plan. And it started with getting sick and tired with where we're at. Getting sick and tired. And I use the illustration of my mother. She would use that phrase all the time. I'm getting sick and tired. And I knew it was time to straighten my act up, right?
I'm sick and tired of you boys fighting all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But getting sick and tired of where you're at, making a plan, and getting moving and going. Okay. So, Joe, I guess the question I would ask you around that is, what would you tell the man who feels like he's stuck in this place and has, in essence, adapted a new identity of being in this? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What would you tell him? He's dealt honestly with the kind of the emotional thing, but his tires are kind of spinning and he's kind of like,
Right.
well, maybe it feels good to be here.
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever been there?
Oh, yeah. That resignation. Well, I guess this is the best it gets. Right.
Right.
Or,
Right.
and at my age, I went through a season where I thought the best is behind me. It's not even, this is the best. It's like the best is back there. And that's just another depth of resignation, right? So I would say, don't give up. Even if all you can do is take a half a step. I think most of us get stuck because we don't see the way out. And the world has kind of come around us and held us in that spot. Even if you can just kind of take a half a step towards what it is that you want. I think that's the other part is for a long time, I didn't know what I wanted. So knowing what my want was helped me to take the next step, even if I didn't know where it was going to take me.
Right.
It gave me the impetus, the courage, and to some extent, the ability. Because when I'm focused on myself and my situation and how crappy it is, hey, that's where I'm living. And those spaces don't get any better.
Right.
They get worse. Right. They get harder.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've noticed, I know this has happened in my life, when I am in a pit, in a cycle, right? My tendency is to make myself feel better. My tendency was, and I've talked about this a lot on the show, is to medicate with alcohol, which is a depressant.
Right.
Which took just deeper into that. And guys who are using weed, they're using pills, they're using alcohol, they're using sex, they're using porn, they're using work, they're using whatever the medication is.
Right.
It just keeps them in that, right? Rarely is the solution going to be found because it medicates you to stay stuck. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it takes more to get less release.
Right.
So it's a double whammy. Not only is it working against you, but it takes more to get less.
Right.
So I think that's a really great way to look at it is you can stay stuck if you want, but you'll get nothing from it.
Right.
You certainly won't get your want.
Right. Well, and understanding also that life is a series of seasons. I mean, my friend Dallas, I quote him all the time on this show, when I was going through a really, really hard season for like 7 years.
Yeah.
It was a long time. He looked at me one time and I was meeting with him and he goes, hey, and this was, you got to know Dallas, right? So this will totally make sense. He goes, life is a series of seasons, my friend. Started very philosophical. Life is a series of seasons, my friend. And you're going through a shitty one. Kind of start off very, very Yoda.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it was just like, yeah, understand that. But he goes, it won't last.
Right.
Like you will come out this season, this storm, this famine, this whatever's going on in your life.
Right.
This too
shall pass.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the best things you've seen to help men get unstuck? To take that next step?
Read something. Look for answers outside of yourself. Look for answers outside of whatever it is you're using to feel better. I think that's the classic part of getting counseling, is saying, I don't have the answers. I need to find someone who can help guide me to the answers.
Right.
So I wonder if it isn't more of an attitude than an action. Because, as a man thinketh, so he goes.
Right. Sure.
So all of this really is up in here first.
Right.
And, my mom, God rest her soul, she died a year ago this last week. She had a great way of teaching me, Joe, somebody's always got it worse than you. And there's a lot of people might have it better. But what is it that you have and are going through in that season, even if it's a shitty one, that you can celebrate?
Right.
To me, you got to find things in your life that are worth eating ice cream about.
Right. Right.
That you can celebrate.
And that's the attitude of gratitude. And that's kind of cliche and all that. But you know what? To get up in the morning and just go, I am thankful for my job.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for health.
Right.
I'm thankful for a relationship. I'm thankful for today. It gets us out of that stuff.
It changes our perspective.
Right.
Yeah. A year ago, I was feeling pretty blue. I don't know that I was depressed, but I was having a hard time being happy. And a lot of it was impending retirement, and would there be enough money, and how was it going to go? And, my dad worked all of his life at something or another, right? And I was like, I don't have a good example. And I just started getting up in the morning, sitting out on the back patio, and literally out loud naming everything that I was grateful for. Even my lawn.
Right.
And there were a lot more than I realized.
Right. Absolutely.
And most of those things were not going to change.
Yeah.
That's the other part that anchors you in that exercise, if you will, or that discipline, is most of those are not going to change.
Yeah. 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 And you mentioned something just a second ago, the old adage of it's hard to solve a problem you're in the middle of. Because when I'm in the middle of it, I do not have perspective of it. And so that is a place to grab an older guy.
Yeah.
My friend Bob, who would come along and he would just tell me stories about him being a manager at IBM, and this would happen and that would happen, and the whole world would cave in. And I'm like, he goes, and we made it. I was like, okay.
It's not as important as you think.
Yeah, it's important,
Right?
But it's not
life or death.
Rarely is it life or death.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. The last aspect of this series that we talked about was about entitlement, and it was in episode 10 that entitlement is the disease of living very myopically, and when you do, your world gets really, really small.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we put that in there just because I've got this edge against people who are entitled. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
Maybe I see it in myself, and so it makes me mad when I see it in other people. I don't know what it is. But,
I've been wanting to talk to you about that.
Please, let's talk about it. We got time right here. But, the disease of living myopically.
Yeah.
What is one of the things that, as you look around, is one of the things that fuels that kind of entitlement living, or that focus on self so much that we become so big and our vision for the world becomes so small?
Yeah. What's
one of the things that you see that fuels that?
I think our society fuels that. How can you call yourself a snowflake and not be entitled? Right?
Sure.
I think I've created some of that, like you were talking earlier with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in my loneliness or my distress, I become isolated. And when I isolate, I insulate.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's anything new.
Right.
I just think we have been told that, it's all about you.
Right. Yeah.
Tell me what advertising piece on TV isn't saying you deserve this.
Right.
This is about me. Yeah. The new truck, that's about me.
Yeah. And all it's done, it's the same message. It's just escalated with all of the social media and, me putting a thing on Instagram. Oh, we're killing it here. I'm a real estate guy, and I just, sold my 100th property this year, or taking a picture of yourself near you're in a Lamborghini that's not yours.
That's not yours.
Or outside that house. Or on the beach or whatever.
Right.
And it just fuels that me stuff.
Yeah.
We talked about the solution of that being like living larger and developing a vision of the world that's bigger than you, and giving and serving.
Right.
And kind of coming back around to where we started the conversation at, that's been a huge part of your life. It's part of who you are. It's part of who God has made you to be.
Mm-hmm.
How has that helped you develop into the man you are today? And that life of serving and going to death row. Going to, I'm assuming you didn't do that just for the social media presence, because you don't have a social media presence.
And I don't have one. And you can't have any kind of cameras or phones or.
Right.
I would say that's a two-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
One is there have been times that I've found my identity in the serving. And I was leaving my family to go do that.
Right.
The other part of it is I get great joy by being a part of a team. God's created me that way. You've seen that on the With Everything weekends and leading a team. That was one of my highlights last year, of leading the team of guys.
Yeah.
So I would just say it's a two-edged sword. it has helped me use my empathy and ability to connect and ability to create, to connect. But when I've taken my identity in that, it's been costly.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And when you start to measure yourself by that,
Right.
Or you do that for isn't Rob, man.
Right.
Oh, wow. And it's just the same thing. It's the same thing.
It is.
I can do it in serving as easily as I can do it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever.
Right.
And then I accuse that guy of doing that. And I'm like, dude, it's the same plank in your own eye. Take care of that, bro. Right?
Yes.
But there is a joy in that. There's a return of joy in giving and serving and living larger. And I do believe that as men, that's a big part of how God has created us, to be expansive, to be fruitful, and to multiply, and to defend
invest,
and to protect and to invest, and all that we've talked about. We started this whole series with the 4 Ps of helping us live with passion, purpose, power, and perspective, and really living out of those things. And so that is absolutely a place where we as men have an opportunity to live bigger than just ourselves.
Yeah.
Because it can become a very, very small place. Yeah.
It made me think about a few years ago, I wound up in the hospital with sepsis.
Yeah.
And I was kind of out of it. They told me Darlene comes back a little bit later that day. They tell her, to me, that was the worst part of it, is seeing her face go white. She picked up my phone and texted 5 guys. And within 30 minutes, 10 guys were there. And the nurses are around me trying to get me squared away. And one of them just said, "You're going to have to work around us, because we love this guy."
Yeah. Yeah.
And within an hour's time, I turned the corner and was going the other way, the good way, not towards death.
Right.
And my prayer in that was, God, whatever glorifies you the most.
Right.
So I feel like God really gave me a gift from the guys that I had invested in.
Yeah.
They showed up. That wasn't like, hey, I'm going to get sepsis next week and you need to show up, so check your calendar.
Yeah.
It was like the investment of time over distance pays great dividends, whether it's with your family or your coworkers or guys that you relate to.
Yeah. And that goes back to the very first episode of this podcast. Don't go it alone.
Yeah.
And you've cultivated a life, not perfectly.
No.
Close, really close.
You keep thinking that, Rob.
But of saying, hey, I want to have men that I invest in.
Yeah.
So that in those darkest times, they're there.
Right.
And I've gotten that text from another guy's wife before. Hey, Bob, we're in trouble. But she knew who to go to.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It was, but pity the man who doesn't have that.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of men live lives of quiet desperation.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, listen, I would love to have this conversation for hours and hours and hours. But I want to thank you for being part of it. Joe and I get together and have conversations like this a lot, not enough.
Amen.
But I appreciate you men joining us. Joe, I appreciate you joining us. And you're a treasure, man. Appreciate you.
Rob, I want to tell you thanks for your encouragement, enthusiasm. I love your creativity that you go, you know what? There's more than one way to get the message out to men. And whether it's the perfect way or not, it doesn't matter. You are diligent in what you're wanting to do, which is let men know that they're not alone, that they don't lack resources and opportunities. Yeah. So just laying another card on the table. Yeah. Bless you, brother.
And don't let perfect be enemy of the good, right?
Just take perfect off the table.
Just take perfect off the table. Yeah. But man, we appreciate you being part of this. The Next Stage is created for you as a resource to help you in your journey. And we appreciate you being part of this whole series. I'd encourage you to go back and listen to episodes, 101, 201, 301, 401. I think it's 6, 7, 8, and 9 and 10, maybe something like that. Grab those episodes, listen to this whole thing, pass them on to another man in your world. And we will see you on the next episode of The Next Stage. If this has meant something to you, please reach out, email us, thenextstage@sherpa5280.com. Thanks for joining us, and go be awesome in your world today. Thanks very much. Hey, and one more thing. If you have gotten something out of this episode or any of the episodes, like, subscribe, share, spread that around. We'd love to increase our scope of what we're doing. I think there's probably more than just, two guys sitting here who could benefit from that. So like, subscribe, share. We'd love any, help that you can give us in spreading the word for The Next Stage. So thanks so much.